and so you get your typical burn down line, and then all of the different progressions. And as you can see, I'm failing pretty miserably with this project, but it's based on sample data I actually extracted from the FDR project, so it's not real data. But there are hundreds of things in this Jira instance, so it'll provide some data and some context. Now let's go look at the next thing. Oh, by the way, there's all kinds of options. You can do burn up, and you can apply different filters. You can do it by issue, so you can start looking for overloading and spikes and things like that. The next topic to talk about is planning board, so let's go have a look there. So if we go into Greenhopper, which is the tool we're proposing to use, we have four main options here, and the first one is planning board. This gives a comprehensive view of all of your projects based on either version or other types of ways to slice your project. So here we're looking at version based. You can also look at the actual overview of the whole project, and you can also see that there's a bunch of different issues that are being tracked, and there's hundreds of them. Again, everything is very Ajaxy, it's very dynamic, so it'll help. You don't have to jump somewhere, you can actually just hover over many things, and it'll show you all of the different states without actually having to jump there. So in Planning Board, if we go to the version view, and here's where we would go and actually dig into the particular versions. Here, this is the whole project backlog, and we can see here all of the different versions that are possible that are in the system. And you can actually expand and contract these views, and you can browse. So one thing to note, if we're perhaps looking at the unscheduled view right now, which is your backlog, everything in here is drag and drop. So you can drag from the unscheduled view, which is your backlog, straight into version 1. Now you just allocated something, or moved it, or assigned it, whatever terminology you wanted to do. It's actually going to move it into that particular release package or version. So I just moved another one. So you can see it's removing them from your unscheduled project backlog into the version. So the count would increase here. So this is going to give you a very nice way to rapidly look at your backlog of work, assign them to particular releases, and then we can go through a scoping activity there. So let's go look at our capabilities plan. Task board, drag and drop. So let's go look here. So the next area that we want to look at is task board. So planning board is at the version or project level. Task board is at the actual individual version level. So you're basically operating only on a version here. So if we are interested in version 4, for instance, which is going to release late this month, here we get a view that is workflow step driven. So what we're looking at here is we've got an overall status of the project. Here we can see that we've got 6% done, and done can have different meanings depending on how we configure the workflow. And then we have 50% in progress, and the rest would be in the to-do. So we have a release backlog, and again, you can change the terminology. It's just simply editing one page. So here we've got a release backlog. We have a total of 21 issues. I've got my view set to show 10 in a group. So here we can see that there's those would be the 3 pages that we could see. So it's actually rotating amongst those 3 pages now. Here, it's if you filled in any estimates on the work, you can actually see it's giving a nice view of what's going on there. So because we can have many more steps possible than a reasonable person would need to look at, you can actually customize and change this view very quickly and very easily. So let's have an example of that. Let's go into configuration. So here we've got release backlog, scope, and design. But there are many other possible steps that we're interested in. So just by simply clicking on these, it'll actually dynamically bring up the next workflow step. You can hover over it to get the name. So we can see that I'm adding into my view all of the workflow steps, and then once I'm satisfied with the view, I can just go ahead and close that. If you're curious as far as to what the card coloring scheme means, you can open up a legend, and you can go ahead and keep that open, or you can close it to save real estate. So now we've got a very agile cardish view of our system, and this is pretty much in a list view here. If we're very interested in finding out what's going on a particular card, you can just double click on the card. It's going to dynamically open that card for you, and then you can actually get the details. So let's go find one. Maybe there's something with some details. This one looks like it might have some more information. And again, everything that you want to see on the card is configurable. You can configure it, but in the card view, which is this view, a summary view, which is smaller than this, or in a list view, you can actually apply different criteria, for instance, coloring, and the fields that are visible, and the actions available based on that view. So I'm looking at my whole project here, and the view that I'm interested in. It's pretty early days in this fake project. We've got a release backlog. I'm looking at scope, which is where we're going to go through estimating the amount of work involved for each of these particular tasks or issues. Then we have the 3 design sub-queues here. We've got to do, in progress, and done. And pretty much this to do, in progress, and done metaphor is carried out across all of the different steps. So I'm going to go ahead and just do some fake work here. I'm going to open up and we'll see what type of work this is if you want to see the legend. I'm going to open up a task, so the color coding will help me figure it out. And yeah, I think I'm going to do an estimate on this. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to estimate that it's going to cost me 23 points, or whatever construct we want to give that score. So I'm going to do my estimation. I would update some notes, of course, in there. Maybe I'm going to estimate some hours as far as the time. And here we can use a 1 day, so that's 1D, and 3 hours. And because I'm a perfectionist, I'm going to do 30 minutes. So again, you're editing directly on a card. You don't have to go off to Jira whatsoever. Pretty much all the major fields. Now I just went through some of the estimating activities. I threw it into the scoping column. I would add maybe some more notes about it, maybe refine my estimate, have a discussion with team leads. And anyway, the goal would be, as I exit from scope, I would have finished my estimating activities, and now I'm going to move it over into perhaps the design step. And here I would expect, well, it's design, so probably someone is either going to write a use case or whatever the task is. It's, whatever the card is telling them to do, they'll actually start working on it. So that's pretty much the metaphor model that we want to use, that it's drag and drop. One key thing to note is that, much like Jira itself, it follows exactly the same underlying workflow, including permissions and transition screens. So whatever the Jira configuration is for the workflow, it will follow that and honor it. So if you move from one workflow step, for instance scope, and you would like to exit that step into doing something with active work, you can set rules so that a screen will pop up and it will ask you that you must complete certain data fields in order to keep the data clean. Or we can just leave it open and people can elect not to complete that information. So we've got a lot of flexibility and power there. Let's go look at our demo plan and see what's next. We talked about dragging and dropping. We talked about different views on the cards. Let's go see the next. We've already touched on custom columns, and again, it's pretty easy to do. You just go ahead and you look at all the columns that are possible, that are configured right now, and for you just go ahead and set it up how you want. If, for instance, maybe you're a developer, not a not a business systems analyst. So you would go in and you would set up your configuration